This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 109.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
Well, welcome to the show. This is not how we started.
It's okay. Well, this is the first time that you're hearing our voices this week, so this is how we start the show. Hey, how's it going, everybody?
I hope you forgot how we actually start the show. It sucks when you listen to like 3 or 4 right after each other and each one starts different. It's very not professional, buddy. Like, you should be disappointed in yourself.
Well, I do live on Skid Row right now, so I mean, how professional can I be?
All right, everybody, you should go watch it on YouTube because you can see Benny and what he's talking about. This Zoom thing is just dangerous in the hands of non-professionals. I'll leave it at that. So today's guest is Tucker Snedeker. I needed to pause because I didn't want to butcher his last name, which I may have done that. Anyways, this was a fun show. So he's a salesperson, was an SE, and it's been a while since we had that. And I wanted to talk to Tucker about the transition because I'll explain how I met Tucker towards the end of the show. But since the first day I met him, he was talking about how people should transition to sales, even though he's not really in love with the role. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the skills that sales engineers should have. What else did we talk about?
I've talked a little bit about the dichotomy between sales engineers and account reps and how companies sometimes view these two different roles. Yeah, I think all in all, it was just a very educational, at least in my perspective, a very insightful conversation from somebody with a perspective that, like you said, isn't very common, just out there.
Yeah, and if you're looking to transition into sales, this is the show for you. If you're looking not to transition into sales, this is also the show for you because he talks about the pitfalls of going into sales. Mm-hmm. So let's jump into the show. Well, good afternoon, Tucker. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to see you guys.
Likewise. Yeah, it's good to see everybody on camera. It's strange times where we don't get to see people in person, so camera is the only way we got to go. So welcome to the show. Maybe you can start off.
Fist bump over.
Yeah, it's right. I just punched somebody in the face because other people are watching this on YouTube. So we can start by maybe you introducing yourself and who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tucker Snedeker. I've been in sales, I think, for around 22 years or something. I started my career, I think it was around 1996. Actually started my own business running web hosting and website company. That was back when, in the day when you would call people and you'd say, you need a website, and they'd say, why do I need that? I've got the yellow pages. So times have changed a lot. There was no Facebook back then and any of that stuff. And then fast forward a couple years after that, I joined a company in San Francisco, a startup. I actually was working for Deloitte & Touche as a Java software consultant. So I had some engineering chops and joined, and then left there to join a startup out of the heart of San Francisco that was doing web reporting and web personalization software, collaborative filtering, the kind of stuff that Netflix does. And I joined as a sales engineer, the first guy out of Chicago they hired in the Midwest, based in Chicago. And then I did sales engineering for close to 10 or 12 years, about 5.5 years at a company called Macromedia, who some of you have heard of, that had Flash Player. They're now part of Adobe. And then I transitioned to another company at the time called TV Guide, that's now part of TiVo, and did another 4 or 5 years as sales engineering, and also moved into sales there. Actually, sales and then back to sales engineering and then back out to sales. So I've kind of gone back and forth between sales and sales engineering. In the last 7-8 years, I've been direct sales or an account manager, account director, a number of software companies. So that's kind of my background. I'm here in New Jersey now, and I still work closely with a lot of sales engineers, and I'm probably talking too much.
Well, before we get going, the mic is it? Are you wearing a lavalier mic or something? Because it keeps bumping or making some sort of noise.
It almost sounds as if you're like outside and the wind is blowing or something, or it was anyways.
Or yeah, or like you're yeah.
Not touching the mic. It's an Apple computer, but is it still bad?
This is
No,
good
right now it's good.
Maybe I just need to be a little closer.
We'll give that a try. Before we started, everything was working fine. Obviously, yeah. No, it's all good. So, right. So you did the sales engineering thing, and you did the sales thing. First off, why did you decide to go from sales engineering into sales?
I think part of it was I had 3 kids, and so the bills were getting larger and larger every year, and maybe this isn't the case at every company, but a lot of companies, they seem to pay the sales folks quite a bit more than the sales engineering folks. So part of it was just a financial decision, and I felt like I'd been around a lot of top salespeople for quite a few years and had learned enough that I could give the pitch myself, but I wasn't being paid like them. And I'm sure many sales engineers that listen to this have been in that same position. Even the ones that have just started, it's quite common for you to be the guy that shows up at the meeting and the other guy can't be there. So that was kind of one part of the impetus, and certainly I don't want to diminish what a sales guy does. There are certainly many other things just beyond the pitch, but contract negotiations and indemnity clauses and all those wonderful things. But there's also a lot of technical questions the sales guy can't do. And I just felt like I was at a point in my career where, one, I wanted a new challenge, and 2, I thought I could do some of those things and do them just as well as many of the people around me that were getting paid well.
So I am one of those SEs who looked across the table and thought I can do his job better. And then I tried it. And I noticed kind of the law of diminishing returns, where I would work maybe an extra 30 hours a week, but the salary increase wasn't comparable. And I just want to ask this question because maybe it's just my situation that was like that. Did you feel the same way? Did you have to work a lot more hours to do the same job, or to do like the sales job?
I think it depends on where you're at. It really does. And I've been on both sides of the coin. I think certainly the pressure of being in sales is much higher than being in sales engineering. I probably enjoyed my sales engineering jobs more than I've had. I would say 50% of the 5 or 6 sales jobs I've had. So on the one hand, I also think it depends on the organization, because there's some organizations that actually do appreciate sales engineers. Then there's some that they're just a checkbox, and an engineer is just another engineer. And I think by putting the word sales in front of an engineer, it's a very different title than just another engineer. At least that's been my experience, because I think the people that are really good sales engineers, they actually have 2 very different sets of skills that a lot of, and no offense to engineers, you could be the best engineer in the world, and you, in many cases, may be a horrible sales engineer. So you may know how to write perfect code, but if you put them in front of a customer, in many cases, it can be a disaster. Whereas you can take somebody that maybe isn't as skilled as an engineer, but has a sales acumen to properly answer questions, that knows how to communicate, that knows how to speak, and when to speak and when not to speak, or when to answer a question and when to say, that's a great question, let me get back to you. Because sometimes because they know the answer and the answer is going to kill the deal. So I think there's a lot more that goes into that than just a black and white or cut and dry.
Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to check, like, a lot of people are start thinking about their careers and they want to do something, they just don't know what. You moved from sales engineering into sales. How did you know you were ready to take that jump? Because it's not an easy job unless you were misled into thinking it was an easy job. How did you know you were ready, and what did you do to actually get ready?
Well, I think I had been doing sales engineering and similar roles for about 10 years before I made the jump. So a lot of it was, you know, I'd watched some of the best salespeople in the world. Guy from Cisco who then came to the startup. He'd made millions of dollars at Cisco and then made a whole bunch of money at the startup. And he also took me under his wing, and you know, he tried to not just make me a sales engineer, but try to make me another sales person on every question that came my way. So I got a lot of good mentoring, but I think a lot of it's just your instinct. You know when if you want to do something different, and you got to listen to yourself and your gut. And I that said, I think when I first started, I wasn't perfect at everything, but a lot of times the way you get good at something is just by trying and doing and taking a chance. So at least for me, that was part of it. And I think the other part was, it was one of those situations where I got to the point in the company where I wasn't growing. I've been doing the same thing for 3 or 4 years. And there just wasn't the opportunity to do the next thing at that particular company. And so it was just a natural transition for me to, look for something else or something different. And I actually went from being a sales engineer to being a VP of sales at another small startup. But we ended up going on to sell a pretty large deal to Orange Group, which was they're kind of the equivalent of AT&T or Verizon here in the United States. So we sold the first mobile television deal to Orange Group. Anyway, so it was a good experience. It was a good challenge. And it was another situation that I put myself in where there was a very senior salesperson above me that kind of coached me, as I moved into that new role. So I think that was, a big piece of being able to be successful there. But the other thing I will say is I think some of the most successful salespeople around the world are often formerly sales engineers or have a technical background, at least for industry. And I think the reason for that is it comes down to solution selling and accounts, being able to listen to people and understand what the customer wants. It's very challenging if you don't have that technical background. And a lot of salespeople, they completely, somebody will make a statement or ask a question and it goes right over the salesperson's head. And I think that's why, good sales engineers are so critical, but also the very best salespeople often have that same technical background.
That makes sense. Actually, what you said kind of rings true to me, because I didn't enjoy the sales job, mainly because I had a bad boss. And I can say this publicly because I've said that to his face. So he made the difference between my experience between becoming a good sales guy or me hating the job. So you having mentors and having senior people coming to help you, plus the experience as a sales engineer, that's how salespeople should be created, I guess.
Yeah. Also, that's the idea of kind of like, jumping from sales engineering to sales. And you mentioned it yourself just now, this idea of, because of the transfer or because of the technical skills that a sales engineer has and being able to answer some of those questions and their knowledge of the solution that they're selling, that they tend to make better salespeople, again, in your experience. Out of curiosity, what are some of the other maybe transferable skills that a lot of sales engineers currently may not expect they already have, but actually work very well in the sales world? And then maybe on the flip side of that also, what are some skills that you maybe thought you had going into the sales role as having been a sales engineer for a decade plus that turns out you were completely wrong about, you had to actually develop that over time?
Well, I would say on the first question, I think this transcends being either a sales guy or a sales engineer, but one of the most important skills is listening. And, we even, across my career, there's many, many companies I've been to where even the top executives, I'll bring them into an important meeting, and oftentimes they're not very good at it. And not all of them are, salespeople, but, and this is an odd one because I'm talking more than listening right now. And I usually don't do that.
In your defense, this is an interview. So hopefully you're talking, otherwise this will be a very awkward conversation where nobody.
Well, I should be interviewing you right now. Right?
Feel free to ask any questions you want. We'll have a conversation.
The second half is going to be you two talking. But
Sure.
But to be very blunt, in a very successful sales meeting, if the customer's not talking more than 50% and hopefully 70% of the time, it's probably a bad sales call. And back to your question, that's a transferable skill for a sales engineer and a salesman. And quite oftentimes I see, especially with new sales engineers, they ask a question about a product and they just want to talk. And really what you need is a quick answer and just a couple of sentences and a cue from your sales guy to say, can you talk a little more about this or a little more about that? Or can we pause for a second? And you asked about that, but is the reason you're asking because you have the problem with this, right? Instead of blurting out like a 15-minute answer. So I think that's a pretty transferable skill. In terms of what didn't work, I think one of the challenges as a sales engineer, it's very go and presentation focused. And one of the painful things I found was actually doing contracts as a sales guy. It's not so much fun. No. Talking to a bunch of lawyers and arguing about a couple words in a contract. You don't get the same rush as you do putting on a great sales presentation. The adrenaline's not flowing the same. So I think there's a different set of, how you're going to spend your time that you got to be okay with. And the other thing I would say, that's very different. Sales engineers usually don't get grilled on Monday morning meetings about the pipeline. So you definitely got to be prepared for that, especially, if it's a tough quarter. So, that's the whole work-life balance thing. And it's like, do you want to take that on and have that on your shoulders? And some days I've enjoyed it and some days I haven't, to be quite honest. I think there's a lot to be said for, if you like what you're doing and you got a good boss, there's no reason to change it.
That makes sense. Although that being said, I mean, you can argue that after having done something for a period of time, maybe you almost have to kind of see the other side to really appreciate where you were almost. Or like I feel that if you've always had the desire to maybe be a salesperson after being in the sales engineering role for a while, even though you may be very happy as a sales engineer, I guess if you were to do it again, would you jump onto the sales side to have experienced it? Or if you could just stay back on the sales engineering side, would you have done that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would again, but a lot of my decisions were also driven by, not just by choice, but by necessity, as is in many people's lives. Jobs change, families change, diapers change, and everything gets more expensive. So yeah, I think I would take the chance again, but at the same time, I wouldn't lie to anybody and say it's been a perfect ride, or everything's been all whiskey glasses that are filled to the top. It just hasn't been.
Fair.
I want to go back to something you said. So you mentioned that there are some things about sales, like talking to lawyers, that are not fun, but there's also some things that SEs do, like filling demo request forms or feature request forms that aren't fun either. So I guess I definitely would rather fill out the demo request forms than talking to lawyers. That's just because I don't want to get into the weeds of that. But if I want to talk about listening, you mentioned two things. listening to the customer, but also listening to the account manager, which is kind of a skill on its own. Like we all talk about listening to customers. No one ever talks about like communicating well with your account manager. How you work with sales engineers on most days. How do you get them on the same page as you're walking into a meeting room?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, I think it starts well before you even get to the meeting. Like when I start a new role or I get a new sales engineer, I try to spend a lot of time with them well before you ever get to a customer. One of the things when I was a sales engineer, and I try to encourage my partners, and I use the word partner because I do believe it's a partnership. It's not a one guy. I hate saying this guy leads the account. That's not the way the world works. I know some people think that way, but you really need to have a partnership with your sales engineer to really make it successful, and a camaraderie, and X, Y, and Z. But I think that's super important. The other thing that I try to really push is preparation before meetings, which I think it's hit or miss, at least with the engineers I've worked with. But when I was doing the job, I was it was a process. It was the Bible. You absolutely you prepared for each and every meeting. And that means, going to a company website, looking at their, news releases, looking at their blog posts from the last month, looking at their, their company financials, looking up the 5 people that are going to be in the meeting on LinkedIn, trying to see if you were at the same university as them, or if they play golf and you play golf, or, I'd go down that list for every single meeting I did. And then if I had time, which you don't always have, I would try to actually put a few notes together and I'd send them to the sales guy, because usually he didn't do that, right? But those are the kinds of things that help really help your partner when you get to the meeting, because you have something funny to say, or you've got something interesting to say, that kind of helps you set the tone for the meeting. So I guess I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
you did. You talked about, you mentioned a couple of things. Partnering, which is something that Chris White, he's a trainer for sales engineers, has a website called Demo Doctor. He has an entire habit that focuses around that. And you mentioned that it's not the account manager that leads the opportunity or leads the account, it's the sales team. And that's something that John Kerr, who's been a sales engineering trainer for like 20 years and has like the SE Bible, Master in Technical Sales, talks about. So you're aligned with thought leaders in that space, and it's good to know that many people think that way, or at least the elite think that way. I wanted to go back to listening. How does one practice that? How does one get better at listening?
That's a good question. So I can only tell you how the guy from Cisco, a guy named Jeff Lotz, LOTZ, who made millions of dollars at Cisco. He was like one of the first 500 employees there. And then he came and, I was like, 23, 24 years old. And it was my first sales engineering job. And for me, the way I learned is he said, don't speak unless I tell you to speak, which may not be the best advice, but it actually was a very good process for me, because 9 times out of 10 I knew the answer, but he would cue me when he needed the answer. Right. And we sold at that particular company, we sold more in a year than the West Coast region, and we were in the Central region, so it was divided into 3 equal regions. We sold more than the West Coast region and the East Coast region combined, and we were selling internet software during the .com boom. So Jeff was on to something. He knew what he was doing. But the second thing is we learned how to communicate. So I knew when he looked at me, or we had signals or cues, that once you've done a 25 or 50 meetings, it became like second nature. I mean, the first few probably didn't go so well, but it became very obvious of, I also knew what kind of questions he wanted me to answer, and I also knew how he wanted me to answer them. And again, this may or may not be good advice for all sales engineers, but one of the things he told me is never give a no. and I know that's a controversial one, but what he meant by that was, if somebody says, do you have this feature? The question may actually not be, do you have this feature? The question may be, can you solve this problem? And we actually have a different feature that does the same thing, or 3 features that do it better than the competition. But if you say to the customer, no, we don't have that feature, they cross you off the list. And 9 times out of 10, it was either we have that feature in the next release, we can get that feature for you if you sign this contract, or we have 3 other features that can do the same thing. But yeah, you're right, we don't have that feature, right? Because the competition does it that way, and we do it this way. So, I think that's, again, a learning lesson, and it's about communication, and it goes back to listening. It goes back to really understanding the problem, not just, a literal yes or no on questions.
That's such good advice. Like I've faced that situation where a customer asks, "Hey, can you do this?" And one of my SE colleagues would say no. And then I would say, like, wait, why do you want to do this? Oh, because we want to solve that problem. Oh yeah, we can solve that problem for you. So yeah, that's amazing advice. In terms of listening, it seems like Vinny has a question. Just let me follow up with that one. In terms of listening, like, were you taking notes when you weren't talking? What were you doing? Because I have SE colleagues, or I have one SE colleague who would zone out and start sending LinkedIn messages in a meeting if he's not talking. So how did you keep focused?
Well, I take Adderall.
I'm not sure that's the medical advice we could give on.
No, but seriously, I think note taking is really important. Again, back to, like, if you want to create a checklist of what a really great SE does, note taking is like right up there at the top of in the meeting list, along with don't talk unless you're asked. And part of that is because the sales guy, he's got a whole bunch of things on his mind. He's trying to run the agenda. He's trying to do, and so you're the passive one in the room. So you got the time as the sales engineer to, take those notes, and they may not always be fun. And then even less fun might be typing them up later, but it's really important. It's really appreciated. And that's actually something I've taken over as I've gone into sales, because 9 times out of 10, nobody's taking good notes. So it's just one of those, again, check marks that I wish the SE would do it, but he usually doesn't, or sometimes he does. I've had some good ones, but a lot of them don't. And so as I move over to sales, I still try to take really good notes. And then I always send out an email, which, first it usually goes to just the two or three people that were in the meeting. And then we check against each other, because usually somebody's missed something. And then after, within, hours of that, then it goes out to my executive team. But it starts with here's the date of the meeting. Here was the name of the meeting. Here's the place of the meeting. Here's the people on our side that was in the meeting. Here's the people on that side that was in the meeting. Here's a summary of the meeting, which is like a very verbose. But then at the very bottom is a set of action items. It's called next steps. And each of those actions has the action, the name of who's responsible for it, that I have assigned as a sales guy, and a date. And as a sales engineer, I did the same thing. I would just put a question mark, and the sales guy could correct it.
Yeah.
There we go.
These are, like, this is one meeting, 3 pages worth. But I feel like SEs and salespeople should be taking notes, because you said it. Some people miss stuff, and we're not going to listen to everything. We're not going to remember everything.
Oh, it's a good habit to have in general, I'd imagine, especially for those people that want to move into the AE or sales or account manager role from being an SE. Why not build up that habit now of writing good notes? Because it'll benefit you well, and just in different ways. Also, something else you mentioned there too.
Can I just stop you on that first?
Yeah.
If you want to take that next level, after you've written up those notes, you put them in Salesforce.
Yeah. No,
depends on the company. My company doesn't want me to put anything in Salesforce. My former company wants me to put stuff in Salesforce. So
I would just say,
well, that's a good point. Different companies use these tools differently.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many actions get missed and how many things, you make all this effort to make these notes. And if you don't put them in email, or if they're just on a notebook, if they don't get an email and they don't get in a, some kind of other format. And, I understand some people say don't put it in Salesforce because the only people looking at Salesforce is management, and we need to manage up, not just manage our business. So that's a challenge. And I've seen that too, but it's critical that somehow that information gets disseminated and then it gets tracked. And whether that be an email or Salesforce, because too often than not, you get a notebook that thick and there's 100 action items in there that nobody but you looks at.
Yeah, not to like advertise Rocketbook, although there is an affiliate link on my website. This is, you take notes by hand, then you take a picture of it. It creates a PDF of all the pages, sends it to your Evernote, OneNote, email, whatever it is, and just it's there. And I usually clean it up, include the PDF, so my handwritten version, and my summary notes, and send it to whoever is required to have it. So with technology, things are getting easier, but then again, more things are added to our plates too. So
that's a great tip, and that's another thing. If you can find ways to save time as an SE, that's always a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Very true. Hey, something you mentioned there not too long ago was very interesting. Well, not so much interesting, just maybe something you mentioned was that, you've experienced all these different meetings, whether it be from you being a sales engineer for more than 10 years to being an account rep at a number of different places. What would you say, just a fun question, what are some interesting things that you've experienced while in those meetings? Have you had any meetings that kind of stood out, especially for those people that might not be going on site or that might have not really dove into too many meetings themselves? What are some of the interesting things that have happened in your breadth of experience?
Yeah, there's quite a few, but I guess one thing I'd say is, you never know what to expect, and I think that's part of the fun part of being a sales engineer. I showed up I'll give you a couple interesting ones. I showed up at a meeting at a startup up in, I believe they were in, I can't remember if it was St. Louis or Minneapolis. This was probably around 2000 or so when the internet boom was happening. And they had just received, I think, like $10 million of VC financing their office, and they didn't have a single table or chair. So we did the presentation on the floor because their shipment of furniture had not yet arrived, and they just rented the office like 3 days before.
What was that?
So that was an interesting one. So PowerPoint on the floor, Indian style, or with the legs crossed.
Everybody huddled?
That was a good one. I was at another meeting. Say again?
I said everybody huddled around that small screen or the laptop screen.
Precisely. Yeah. I was at another meeting. This one probably takes the cake, and it was the VP and like 5 of her direct reports at a very large bank. I won't say the name of the bank. And we were selling web reporting software. And about 10 minutes into what should have been an hour-long meeting, the VP went lights out and started snoring in a very small conference room, right? I mean, this is like a small conference room, and she's snoring. And I'm giving the presentation, trying to click through the technical slides. And I looked around the room, and it was quite clear that none of her direct reports were going to wake her. And I'm not sure if they had this happen before, or if they were just, trying to follow protocol, and it was her call, but no one was going to wake her. So the show had to go on. And so I just kept rolling through the slides. I did try to accelerate a bit. And at the end of the presentation, she suddenly woke up and thanked us for coming. So that was, and then the last one I would mention, and I got many more. I was giving sometimes SEs get pulled in to do things more than just sales pitches, and we had just sold a big deal, and I was supposed to give a 1-day training session to like 25 people, and as we hit lunchtime, my phone started blowing up, and I looked at the phone and I called my actually the sales guy was there. He called the VP, and the VP said, "Shut the training down. The company's just been sold." but don't tell them it's been sold. So we had to get back on stage right after lunch, after we paid for sandwiches, and said, we've given you a lot. We don't want to wear you out. We're just going to cut this, cut this really short today. And, but we're here to help you.
Wow. Okay. I've had my sales guy fall asleep in a meeting, but I've never had to do a presentation in front of a company that just got sold. So that's an interesting one.
This wasn't the sales guy that fell asleep. This was the customer I was supposed to be engaging. So that's even worse. But
yeah. I don't know which is worse. Like, you can't sell to a sleeping customer, but also my sales guy can't sell if he's asleep. So I think it's equally bad.
Sometimes though, you need to get your rest to be at the top of your game. So I mean, for you to make the best decision and for the salesperson to be their best, gotta take a couple minutes there.
I just took that as I need to learn juggling while I'm presenting to keep people more awake. So you gotta ask yourself, how can you be better every day, right? It's not her fault. It's probably mine.
True. I've fallen asleep in meetings before, and thankfully not with customers or prospects, typically internal ones. But I mean, it's good that you got a good takeaway of growth there. I would imagine she probably feels the same way. I know I certainly did. I haven't slept as much lately during meetings, but I guess now working from home, so who would even know? But
we're gonna cut that out, Benny. We're gonna cut that out. No one needs to know that you're falling asleep in a meeting.
Oh, I don't mind. I do want to ask one quick question, by the way, just based upon something that you mentioned at the very beginning, which is the idea that, some companies treat sales engineers better than others. And you have a very unique perspective of having been both a sales engineer and a salesperson for a period of time. What's your opinion on it? Do you think that sales reps should be making hands and feet quite a bit more money than the best sales engineers should be? Should it be more equal? You did mention the pressure and what's at stake as well for a sales rep versus an SC. So, what's your overall take on comp plans and the dynamic between the two?
So, I mean, I think a lot of times sales engineering it starts as an entry level or a position for younger engineers. So in that sense, I think whereas top sales guys often have many years of experience, certainly the sales directors that level. So in that sense, I mean, I understand there's some disparity, but I think sales organizations need to look at their top performers, not just on the sales side, but on the sales engineering side, and said, these guys are really making a difference. And then I think from there, it becomes, it should be a dialogue with HR and with the sales manager, because I think there's ways to, some sales engineers, they don't want a 50-50 or a super leveraged, comp plan. Maybe, and that's a choice. That's a trade-off. If you want to leverage comp plan, you could make a lot of money, but at the same time, you may not make a lot of money. You may make very little money. And, a lot of sales guys are taking that risk in return for the reward. But at the same time, I think there's other ways you can compensate your very best sales engineers. And that's things like, additional stock grants. And I mean, a lot of times the sales engineers are not paid the base salaries that they deserve. I mean, I've seen that in a lot of places. They're just not paid. If the base of a sales guy is 150K, I can tell you the base of a sales engineer can be 150K. And then the comp plan, for the leverage can be different, or for the bonuses or whatever. But there's lots of sales engineers that aren't getting paid, their fair share, in my view, at a lot of places. And, that's unfortunate. And I've also seen a lot of good sales engineers leave to become salespeople because they couldn't get a raise for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that's also wrong. If you and the sales guy are killing it and you're, 50% of the reason why you're beating the number, the company needs to look at that and say, somehow we got to keep this guy happy. And I think unfortunately a lot of organizations, and having been on both sides, they just say, let's hire the best sales guy, and then it doesn't matter who we put around them. And that's just not the case. It really makes, it could be 20-30% more deals if you've got the right sales engineer around you.
No, couldn't say it better myself. That is great. That's great.
So some companies treat SEs badly. I know a lot of companies that pay SEs like over 200,000 or in the high hundreds. That's base plus commission. I personally am okay getting paid less than an account manager, just because I don't have to go through the struggles that they do. My base covers my payments, like my bills, my daily bills. My commission is extra gravy, and I don't have to worry about it. Whereas a lot of salespeople, they have to make their commission in order to pay all their bills. That could be because they're spending a little bit more money than SEs, but they are working longer hours. They have to handle more stress. Like the things that they do, SEs don't generally see. It's hidden. So I'm okay with it personally. Not that I was asked that question.
Personally, I mean, fair enough, but I would argue that I think the on-target earnings, like, sure, I mean, whatever that gets you to be is good, but I think that if even just the overall compensation package or even the base is something that I don't know, isn't what it perhaps should be, that's when a lot of the issues that were just brought up, that's when those could probably come up, where a lot of organizations, and I'm just speaking kind of off the top of my head here, but if organizations kind of see, you know what, I want to make sure that my top sales reps are given all the comp that they need. And in your case, Ramsey, that's good that you have, like, they're giving a package that kind of fits what you need. But it could be that for many other sales engineers, that isn't necessarily the case, where they just kind of get a standard package or whatever that isn't quite sufficient for what they're really delivering to the team. And that could then lead to some disparity in how much effort they're putting into what their expectations are. And that could then lead to people leaving and whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah, people leave, and that's their right. I didn't get that on day one. I had to work for it, and then I had to move a company in order to get what I want. So
exactly, yeah.
No one's forcing you to stay with that company, right?
True.
So I don't know, Tucker. You're enjoying this right now because you don't have to talk. All you have to do is listen. But I would love your input about that.
Yeah, no. The one thing I would say though is it isn't always just how many at the end of the year. One of the things that at least was important to me as an SE is, you know, you'd have a sales meeting, and they'd pull up, 25 different salespeople and tell them how wonderful they are, and they'd forget to bring an SE up on stage. Or you'd bring up the sales guy and give him all the credit for closing the giant telecommunication deal for $5 million, and not one word about the SE. So I think that's another place where companies, they really go off kilter and it's really important to people because, job satisfaction isn't just about, do I have a lot of money in my bank account?
Yeah, I've never had that. So in the companies that I've been with, both SEs and salespeople are invited to the stage together. So maybe that's the disparity in our experiences. But now it's time.
Well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, what about sales? Another one where I've seen a disparity, and again, it's just my experiences, but they have some of these companies have sales clubs where they fly people to Hawaii, and I've never seen them fly an equal number of sales engineers to salespeople. So that's just one example, and I hope your company, if it is, I'm going to go look at the jobs page right after this, but most of the companies I've worked for, there's a disparity there. And again, it's just another example of recognition of, who's really rowing the oars.
Yeah, so in my industry, SEs are sent to wherever salespeople are sent to, because it's a team. It's usually a sales guy and an SE who work together in tandem, not a pool of SEs helping out a salesperson. It's just one-to-one. So it's obvious. You can tell that the salesperson and the SE work together for a deal. So it was easier to send people together. I don't know about other industries. I can't really comment about that.
It could just be a company to company thing though, too.
Yeah, too. You're right. All right. Well, it is time to move on to the not so fire round. These are the same questions we ask every guest, and usually Benny kicks it off.
Sure. Yeah. So you've already mentioned some of the things, perhaps, but what is maybe one thing in particular you love about what you're doing?
Well, I've been working from home for almost 22 years. So this COVID thing isn't affecting my work schedule.
Yeah.
I like the flexibility of being in sales, and but that's the same if you're a sales guy or a sales engineer. I like the flexibility of being able to go and make business and execute.
Nice. All right. How you already mentioned a few things, but if there's one thing you would change about sales, what would it be?
Oof. I guess a lower quota.
Yeah. So I don't think I've asked any other salespeople that question. You're the first, and as a salesperson, I agree with you 100%. I'm not a salesperson, but like I would agree with salespeople 100% that lower quota, or at least don't keep increasing it every year, or make it a flat fee. How do you feel about that? A flat fee of whatever you sell, like you get 2% of whatever you sell. It doesn't matter if it's 5 million or 1 million.
I like plans where there's accelerators. To be quite honest, I mean I think that's part of the reason why I went from as an SE a number of my roles I had kind of a flat bonus plan, and I think one of the reasons you move into being a sales guy is to have a lot of upside. So I like to see that my percentage goes from 2% to 10% or to 5% or to 7% as you sell more.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
All right, so on to the next question. I think you mentioned one as well. I think you kind of touched on a lot of the questions or the not so fire around during the interview, maybe indirectly. However, what would you say are some books and tools or resources that you would recommend to whether it be sales engineers, maybe even salespeople looking to become sales engineers, or vice versa, sales engineers looking to become salespeople?
There's this really good website called We Are Sales Engineers.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know. I mean, I've read tons of sales books. I think one of the things, a lot of companies are really into frameworks these days. So I think over well in interviews if you say a framework like Miller Hyman or Blue Sheets, things like that. A lot of big companies like to hear that you've got process behind you, not just technical chops, and that you understand what the sales guys are doing.
What are these?
Those would be the
processes?
couple off the top of my head, but I mean, there's Miller Hyman is one of them. It's a sales framework, and it uses they call it Blue Sheets. So basically, at every at least for strategic accounts, you fill out a sheet, and a lot of these different sales frameworks, they have different names for the same thing, but essentially you name the influencers in the decision, their concerns, the actions from the last meeting, the actions from the next meeting. There's a whole bunch of things you kind of lay out in a sheet, and part of the whole point of the sheet is to make sure you've thought it through. And then, you hand that to the executive team, and it doesn't mean you're going to get the deal or not get the deal, but just by doing the exercise, it's helpful to make sure you're not missing something or leaving gaps, or, is this person a decision maker? Is this person an influencer? Is this person, a technical person, or is it a business person? Who owns the budget? All those things are kind of flushed out when you do one of these sheets, and it's all part of this. Miller Hyman is just one of them. There's many processes like this, but a lot of the big companies, they send all their salespeople to training on this stuff. So being familiar with something like that and be able to, talk to how that works, I would suggest. And it's good for an SE, not just a sales guy.
I just found a link to that, which we'll put in the show notes. I lost track of which show this is, show 1010 or something like that. But we'll.
108.
All right. So last question for us. In your opinion, what do you think differentiates great SEs from the okay or not so good ones?
I think I kind of touched on this before, but it would start with, so technical chops, everybody's got to have, that's kind of a check box. But I would say listening skills, preparation for meetings. And then the third one I would say is communication. And when I say communication, it's communication with the customer, it's communication with your sales guy. And the third thing we didn't talk about is also communication, good communication with product marketing. You got to be on top of what's going on in the company because often the sales team isn't. So I would say those three things, listening, preparation, and sales skills. And if you can do those things, you're probably ahead of 89% of the people around you.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much, Tucker, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Before you go though, any maybe as the last comment or last little things that you might want to throw in there, where can people find you?
That's a good question, Benny.
Like, so LinkedIn, Twitter, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I guess you guys can throw a link in the show if you want.
Yep.
Deem that appropriate and aren't too scared of me by now. So LinkedIn is kind of my primary, and feel free to reach out and connect with me. And I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn. I think, in fact, I think that's how you guys met me, or I met you. And whatever I can do to help other folks out there, let me know. I'm ready to do it.
Actually, I'm going to remind you of how we met. I applied to a job at a company that you used to work for. And in my research, I downloaded a white paper, and then you thought I was lead and you called me. And we ended up talking for like an hour or two about the role.
I remember that now.
Yeah,
Yes.
like you helped me a lot, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Did you get the job?
No, because I didn't. I became a finalist, but I don't do C++. Like, I haven't done C++ since university, so I'm not sure how I got to become a finalist in the interview process. But hey, I got to practice my interview skills.
Remember that other tip about never say no. Ask them why they're asking about C++.
Well, I did, and no, we don't have that feature for sure.
Anyway, I think it's been super, and I appreciate literally super, man. I appreciate you guys chatting with me today, and I'm a little worried about that tent city behind you. Yeah.
Hey, it's warmer here than it is where I would be otherwise, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Let me know if I can be of help in the future, and let me know if we can do this again. I got plenty more comedy coming.
And we'll do this again for sure. Thanks, Tucker. Bye, man. Let's outro this. How did you feel about it?
I loved it. I thought it was a really good conversation. I think that I thought that Tucker brought a really great perspective, having been both an SE and a account rep for not even just a little while, for quite some time, which is a little bit different than some of the people that we've had the opportunity to speak to, or at least that I've had the opportunity to speak to. So it's really cool to see like what should be in someone's mind if they're planning on making the switch, what things can work, what things can't. And then the whole compensation plan talk was wonderful in my opinion as well.
Yeah. The one thing I would disagree with him about is SEs are not allowed to talk unless they're asked. Maybe brand new SEs, sure, but as you develop the skills, like if you're messing up your job, sure, yeah, don't talk. But as you develop the skills and to know what questions to ask, what questions not to ask, but always taking the salesperson's lead. By the way, I don't know if you can hear my kids crying, but we're in COVID, so I apologize. So yeah, like if you're, and I need to shave. Yeah, that's the only thing I disagree with. But the rest of this was just like a fun conversation. He's a fun guy.
Agreed.
Yeah,
fun. I think that the like the whole don't speak unless spoken to thing was, I mean, I could see it having its uses kind of in the sense that you described there, where if you're just kind of learning, you're not really feeling too comfortable yet. And it would be maybe awkward if you're just to speak out of line because you don't know any better. Then perhaps, yeah, wait for your cues a little bit. And but then like sales engineering in general, I find that, or just based upon other conversations that we've had, it looks like you don't really get to unleash the true power of what you can be as a sales engineer until you've been doing it for a little bit. And so once you kind of earn the respect of those around you, all simultaneous to that, you start doing more interesting things, and you then start to be able to speak up a little bit more during these conversations and take a lead more often, to the point where all of a sudden, like in your situation and Tucker's as well, I've actually experienced it a few times too, where the sales rep, leaves or isn't there during the call or just isn't there at all. And then you now have to take over the entire conversation. So it's almost a profession.
And it's good to practice while the account manager is there, just so they can develop that trust in you. And I just released a video today, which is a few weeks before we published this episode, where I talk about the secret things that SEs do, and one of which is negotiation. And what I meant by that is every time, and I said that on the video, every time we open our mouth, it either adds value or reduces value. And that's the salesperson's biggest fear. If we say something stupid that would reduce the value so much that we'd lose the deal, because I've seen that happen, or at least I've heard of that happening. I haven't seen it firsthand. So yeah, or at least makes it harder to overcome.
Not to be confused with saying something stupid for comedic effect, which sometimes can add value to the deal. I'm a big fan of just saying dumb, stupid things during calls to elicit a laugh or whatever it may be. And maybe it's just in my experience. I guess we typically have a pretty young sales team, and so the dynamic's a little bit less formal. But yeah, sometimes just breaking the ice or maybe breaking the tension, in my experience, has added some value, at least as far as I know.
I agree with you. I actually have a very good relationship with my customers because I have a limited amount of accounts and I deal with them all the time, to the point where I just make jokes with them. I'm there. I'm one of the guys. We're joking around like normal. And then the sales guy would come in and then he starts apologizing for me joking, or he starts explaining my jokes. No, he's joking. And that's the same guy that I mentioned that I didn't enjoy working for. So
I love it.
Yeah, like
that's in the end, but what a weirdo. That guy has it.
No, I wouldn't go that far. At least not on record. But yeah, so yeah, like building a relationship. Like joking is kind of building a relationship. You're breaking the ice. You're making them laugh, and the more they laugh, the more they like you, right? So yeah, but this was an awesome conversation, and this is show. We agreed that this is show 109, right? Not show 108, as Benny incorrectly mentioned on the show. Not his fault. Not his fault. He was gonna edit it out, but now he can't because I'm ranting about it. But yeah, it was not his fault. I forgot to tell him that this is not show 108. So it's show 109. WeTheSalesEngineers.com/show 109. Everything is on the show notes, and do you want to say something before we leave, Benny?
Yeah, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much to Tucker. Thanks so much, Tucker, for having, for taking the time to speak with us today. Hopefully you're all, staying safe and staying sane during this all. I mean, I've probably been saying that every single week, but you got to take this week by week, day by day, and find something to make it to the next, whatever that may be. Pods, I guess. Should you want to take us out for the whole rate us and all that?
I'm just saying that you should record this once and just add it onto the end of every show.
I could potentially.
Actually, you did such a good job. You take us out.
All right. So no matter where you're listening to this from, whether it be via iTunes or if you're listening to this from some other podcast tool, please take the time to rate us. It only takes a couple of seconds and actually helps us out quite a bit. It's really important to try to get this out to as many people as possible. After getting a lot of the feedback around this is helping a lot of people. So if you feel the same way, then please do rate us. If you want to go the extra mile, share us around to your colleagues, tag us as well. It's always a nice way to go about it. Smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube if this way you're watching it. Hopefully you're enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying this, let us know that too. I mean, we're a pretty flexible group. If there's anything that you think you'd like to hear about, let us know.
This is Benny for Ramsey, signing off.
Forgot about that part.